Okay, before we get into the nuts and bolts, let's talk big picture stuff here. Why do we care about conservation of energy? What can it do for us? Well, first, let me just tell you, conservation of energy is awesome. Why is it awesome? Because it lets us answer questions, make predictions about the future where it would be really hard to or really impossible to do with Newton's laws. And this is a little bit like conservation of momentum, except it's even more useful. It's more powerful. It applies to many, many more situations. Here's just one kind of basic example involving all the forms of energy that we're going to be dealing with in Chapter 10. And in a later video, I'll talk about, okay, what is mechanical energy? Why do we call it mechanical energy? What forms of energy are mechanical energy? But this one all involves these forms of energy that fall together under mechanical energy. All right, here you are, right here, and you're in a roller coaster car, and your roller coaster car is pressed up against this compressed spring. And so you know from your reading, hopefully, that there's energy stored in that spring. We also notice that you're a certain elevation above the lowest point on the track. And I want to know, basically, how fast would you be going here? Let's just call that point A. How fast would you be going at point B? How fast would you be going at point C? And this essentially would be impossible using Newton's second laws, because I could never know, using Newton's second law, I could never know how fast you were going when the spring was done pushing on you. But it's easy to do using energy analysis. At point A, I could never, because I don't know this slope here, I could never use Newton's second law. But using conservation of energy analysis, it's easy to know how fast you're going to be going at A. It's easy to know how fast you're going at B. It's easy to know how fast you're going at C. And it's really almost just like a game. There's a certain accounting system which you're going to need to be familiar with. And that's kind of it. So that's the big picture. What we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, here is our system at maybe the beginning. Here's our energy in our system when it's at A. Here's our energy in our system when it's at B. And here's our energy in our system when it's at C. And what we're going to find in this particular case, it won't always be the case, but in this case, we're going to find that the total energy in our system is going to remain constant. Now, we're not going to worry about friction and drag, because those do complicate things. So more on that later, a lot more on that later. But for now, let's just think big picture, no drag, no friction. So the total amount of energy, maybe it's 1,000 joules. I'm just making that number up. But if there's 1,000 joules at the beginning, there'll be 1,000 joules when it gets to, A. I guess I don't know what this is called because I don't have a letter for it. And this is going to be 1,000 joules here. And it's going to be 1,000 joules at C. And all we have to do is kind of think about, I'm getting a little bit more detail than I want, because this is next video is our accounting game. But I could see, like at the beginning, you've got some energy tied up in the spring. You're also elevated. There's no kinetic energy at A. Then we see that, the spring energy is gone, but now you've got kinetic energy and you've got less gravitational anyway. And then at B, we're going to say it's all kinetic. And at C, back to some kinetic and back to some gravitational. Again, this is getting into the details. The big picture I want you to consider is, what is the point of Chapter 10? It allows us to deal with much more complicated situations than we could with just Newton's second law. Conservation of energy is awesome.